Glocks. That's what we're going to talk about on this one. First video here, just wanted to show you some different generations of Glocks. I'm going to talk about Gen 3 through 5. I do not have a 1 or 2 here, but I'll explain the differences in those. So, starting with Generation 3. Glock. This is their full-size, standard full-size in a 40, which is a Glock 22. The same one in a 9 would be a Glock 17. They're the same dimensions. They changed the mag, the barrel, and the ejector, but otherwise they're the same gun. This one, 15 rounds in the 40. Full size in a 9 is 17 rounds. So Generation 3 has the light rail, or laser rail, but for me it's only a light rail. Not a fan of lasers. I would rather be able to see what I'm shooting at instead of just seeing a dot on something that I can't identify. Generation 1 was the late 80s first import into the US version that nobody really saw much of. When they became popular, they were already to Generation 2. The differences in those, they did not have these front finger grooves. These line your hand up, kind of give you a place to put your fingers. Gen 2 did not have that. It was just flat up there. And Gen 2 did not have this little rail. Otherwise, they're pretty similar. They changed some of the pin layout for the frame, going to the Gen 3s. This is another variation of a Gen 3. This is the RTF2. Very sandpaper-like grip texture. And half moon cuts on the slide. This was the only variation that they used these on. A lot more machine work that goes into that. Really doesn't do you any good. I just like this one because it was different. And I left this one all stock because it's kind of a weird thing to find. The only thing I did, I put this bottom plug in, which I do to all of my Glocks usually. It just keeps dirt and things from getting in the bottom. When it gets in the bottom, it can get up into the action, and I don't want to deal with the dirt and fuzz and metal shavings and wood chips and anything else I tend to get in mine on a day-to-day basis. Moving up from that, this is Generation 4. The additions on this were the reversible mag release. So for the left-handers out there, you can take this button, switch it to that side, use your left hand to release the mag. They can't both be done at the same time, and if some gun manufacturers make it so you can use it left or right-handed, this you cannot. But if you're a lefty, switch it over, leave it there. You don't really need it to be on both sides. They also put the additional back straps on the Generation 4s. You can change the size, the distance this beaver tail comes out. Gives you a little more of a palm fit, depending on the size of the back strap you put on. On this one, I added the extended slide release, whichever you want to call it. Just helps you get a little better grip on that there. Also put a fiber optic sight on this one. Just helps in daytime shooting. Sunlight gets in there, lights it up a little bit, get a nice green dot. Nighttime, it really doesn't do me any good. But that is where night sights come in. So on my Generation 5 here, I'll show you the night sights and then I'll get into the differences of the Gen 5. These glow. These are Trigicons. There's a few companies that make them. They're all relatively the same. But these are tritium tube that glow for, they have a half-life of 12 years. So they'll be half as bright in 12 years as they are when they're brand new, but they go on a long time. Technically that means 24 years they'll be totally dead. I have seen some that lived past that. I've seen some that didn't make it 10. I haven't quite figured that part out yet. But I'll try to show you this. In the dark, they glow green. Ooh. Alright. So changes from the Generation 4 to Generation 5. They went back semi-old school. Got rid of the front finger grooves on the frame. Just went back to a straight little bit of texture. But they did add, which they've never had before, a flared magwell. Just a little bump. Helps when you're funneling a magazine in. You'll see here, when you go to put that in there, it kind of makes you go to the right spot. Just easier for reloads. Don't have to be perfectly straight on with it. Now the Generation 5, they added ambidextrous slide stop, slide release that can be used from left or right at the same time. It doesn't have to be switched. It's always in both spots. Makes it nice. I also went back, I was talking to you earlier about the Generation 3 pin layout. See how that has 2 pins above the trigger. This one, Generation 5, they went back to single pin, like the early ones. Now in another video later, I'm going to get into tearing all of that apart. But for now, this is just to show you the basics of the Glock line. I will field strip one today before I run out of video space, which also I will be setting up better camera options later. So here's a Generation 4 Glock 35. This is their long slide. This is their target gun. Now I took that one step further and I bought all the fancy parts for it. Now these have a cut slide in the front. Adjustable factory rear sight. Now when I built this one, I got all the blue anodized stuff here, trigger, mag release, stainless pins, stainless takedown lever. Had to do the little Punisher guy on there. But there's thousands of things you can do to these. You can kind of make them however you want. I just got bored and decided to put this one together and make it look cool, and I don't end up using it much. I still tend to stick to the factory ones. I like the factory triggers. This one's very nice, but it's not really necessary for what I do. Usually I'm doing just basic training, shooting paper. Not doing competitions, but that's where this one shines. I just don't get to use it often enough. Here's a Glock 27. This is their small double stack 40 caliber. Now this is the daily carry. This one has had a rough life. Shows its age. Really can't tell in this crappy camera, but It's getting shiny on the corners. It's what they tend to do when Glocks wear. They get spots like this, if you can see it. Shiny. So for the basic teardown, I'm going to use my Generation 4 23. And so you always want to clear them. Make sure there's nothing in it. Magazine is out. Chamber is empty. Nothing in it. So you're going to release the slide forward in a safe direction, preferably at the ground. If there's nothing below you, pull the trigger. Some people complain about that because it's really not the best way, but there's no other way on these, being that they're striker fired. You have to be able to release the striker. So that's the first step of teardown. Next, there's lots of ways you can do this. I'll show you the way I do it. I put my thumb in the trigger guard here, push back on the end of the barrel just a little bit with my hand, and pull down on these little tabs here sticking out of the frame. Takedown lever, pull down, and hold. With your other hand, you can let off the front of the slide, grab it, pull it forward. Comes off. From there, your basic teardown, there's nothing else to take out of the frame. You can sit it down. Recoil spring and guide rod, you push forward, pick up, that'll snap out of there. There's that. On your barrel, pick up on the back, pull it out toward the rear of the slide. That's your basic teardown. That's all there is to these. That's generally all the further you have to take them apart to do a quick cleaning. In my later videos, I'll show you full in-depth striker out, back plate off, all of the fun springs and things. But for now, that's all what you got. Reverse that. Back in business. I'll see you later when I have more camera.